Okay, hello students. I know y'all are professionals by now, so you don't really need my help, but just in case, I'm going to give you just a few pointers. Last week we laid out your pattern and we cut it out in the last lesson. So I'm going to talk to you now about marking the pattern, preparing it, and some of the things you're going to need to assist you with this process. This is called interfacing. This is actually a featherweight, because the fabric I'm using is a cotton and it's very, very, very thin. So you don't need anything heavy. Now remember when we looked at our pattern pieces, it told us that certain pieces had to be cut, one on the fold, as you can see there, and then it said one of interfacing on the fold. So that's what we're going to do with this fabric. What we're going to do is we're going to get enough of it. Let's see, if we're cutting it on a fold, I probably need about this much for this piece. Okay, I'm going to fold it in half. Okay, and then I'm going to place my pattern piece on it. Okay, so that I can cut one to match the piece that we're getting ready to make. And this is the waistband. This is the interfacing. And this goes in your waist of the skirt, so it kind of feels right. You don't want it real limp on you. And I'm just going to cut real close again, just like my pattern piece. And you can trim the extras away a little later. If you've got it hanging over the edge, you'll know when you get ready to press it. This particular interfacing is an iron-on. It's called fusible. F-U-S-A-B-L-E, fusible. That means that you iron this on and it bonds to the fabric. Okay. Now we need to cut two of this one at interfacing, but it's not on the fold, as you can see by the arrows. It's not on the fold. This one, the arrows is bending, like we said in the last lesson, to let you know it's the fold, but this one it's not. So since this is not on the fold, I only need to cut two of them. I'm going to cut them facing each other, of course, because you need a matching pair. Alright, so I'm going to make sure that my arrow's going on the straight up and down with the edge, which it is. I'm going to pin it in just a few spots so that I can get it to lay straight on the fabric. Okay, and you might need to put more pins. I'm a professional. I've been doing this a little while, so I don't use a lot of pins. Okay, so we're going to cut this out as close as we can. And the next step is going to be marking our patterns. Okay, so on your pattern, you're going to see little triangles. You're going to see some circles as well. Of course, we drew that dart line out, and I'm going to retrace it for you today. This one is a size 14 up at the top. So we're going to go with the dart that's right here. This dart that's right here is the dart for the 14, size 14 skirt. I know it's a 16 in the hip, but it's a 14 up top, and that's what matters with this portion. If it were marking down here, we'd go with 16, but it's a 14. So you got all types of little angles going around here, little triangles, and those are going to clip out in just a moment. Right where I altered the skirt, you don't have one, so you got to put one in place. And this is how I do it. I take my ruler, and I let my ruler go through the center of all of these, and it helps me find the center. And then, of course, on this piece, it would be right there because it's in line with the rest of them on that corner. That's where I made my alteration. Normally, if I had done a 16 skirt, it would have been out here a little further. Okay? Now, something very important. At the bottom, it tells you that there's a 1 1/4 inch hem in this skirt. So what I'm going to do is mark my pattern 1 1/4 inches from the edge. And you're going to take your tape measure or your ruler and mark 1 1/4 inch. Okay, and then I'm going to draw this line in. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I'm going to mark where the hem is going to go on this skirt before I put the skirt together. I just think it's more professional and it looks better. You're going to do the same thing on the front skirt pieces as well. Alright. And I know I'm moving pretty quickly, but you can watch this video over and over and over and over again until you get the hang of what I'm doing here. Okay, so this is my hemline. This is a purple disappearing pen, so the ink that's going to disappear in hours as long as it's exposed to air. Okay, so because you have this on the fold, there'll be no cuts over here to put a hole in your fabric. But on this side, you have, okay, let me mark my little triangle on this side as well. Once again, I'm going to go through the center of all of these. Okay. And I'm going to mark this one consistent with the others. So when I go to mark it, when you go to cut it, you're going to see that those triangles need to be cut out like this. Okay, I need to sharpen my scissors too as well. Let me get another pair. Alright, let's see if these will do a better job. Here's a triangle up here at the top. So I'm going to put one right there. Okay, that's all of the triangles on this one. On this one here, we've got a triangle over at the hip line. We have one up at the top of the waist. And on this line here, the center back seam, you have one. And I can tell you, usually the marking that's up top near the waistband, about 7 inches down, is for your zipper. So when you put a zipper in, it usually stops about that. You're going to see that on most patterns. If you don't see that, you're going to see a circle. The circle may be up here as well. If that circle is up here, let's say you got a 7-inch zipper. So you got a 1/2 inch at the top for your seam. I'm sorry, 5/8 of an inch, and a 7-inch zipper. So that's 7 and 5/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So roughly, that circle would be about here. This is a stopping point. Wherever you see circles, you're going to mark them on your pattern, because those are going to be places where you stop stitching whenever you see a circle. You want to ignore this line because this was the cutting line for a different skirt. So that doesn't have anything to do with this skirt. Okay. Now we are going to get ready to mark our darts. And I did not put the dart in the back one. Excuse me. The 14. So we're going to go with this one in the back. Okay. So you're going to get your tracing paper, which I have, voila, and I try to use a color that is not that's going to show really well on my fabric, because once you get to marking it and stitching, it's kind of hard to see. So we're going to use a tracing wheel, which I have, and you also have one too. I sent you one with your packet. So here's my tracing wheel. All right, now this is obviously the right side of my fabric, and this is the wrong. You want your markings on the wrong side. So, for example, this hemline. I'm going to put my tracing paper in here where I have tracing wax on both sides so that I can mark them both at the same time. I'm going to hold it down gently, and I'm just going to let that wheel roll over it. And I stop it at points because you don't want the fabric or the paper to move, so you got to kind of stop along the way. Okay, and let's see what we got. Yep, we got the line. I have one, I have two. If you look real closely, you can see both lines, and those are my hem lines. Okay, now there's a round circle here that we need to mark. So we're going to get in between the two pieces of fabric. And of course you can't make a circle, so what I do is make an X. And I try to make the X right in the center of that dot. And if you look at this, you will see it. It's right there. Okay? Now the dart at the top. We're going to mark the dart at the top. So to mark the dart at the top, notice I still leave some pins in here in some places so it doesn't move. My fabric, I don't want my fabric to move. So now we're going to mark here. And once again, we're going to do this. We're going to mark to the point Now what I do at the bottom where my point is, I also mark a little perpendicular line, so when I am stitching I know where it stops. Okay, and take a look. You can see that it did transfer. One more trick that I want to teach you about this, I think you should do, even though they don't have it on the pattern. Measure the distance at the top of that dart. That distance is 1 1/4 inches. Half of 1 1/4 inches, which is 5/8 of an inch. So go in 5/8 and mark. Draw a line from the center of that dart to that point you just marked. And that's pretty close. It's a little off. I'm going to come a little to the right of it. And mark that center. The reason why you want to do that is because when you go to sew this dart, you can fold it in half and make it pretty much perfect. Okay, and as you can see, I'll take these pins out and you can see what I've done here now that all the parts are marked. Okay, so let's take a look at this skirt back. So this pattern clearly shows where my stopping point is and my darts. Okay, and sometimes the darts can look a little faint, so I just take my marking pen and I go over them just to make sure, just in case you're not going to be sewing it right away. It can easily kind of disappear on you. Okay, alright, that's the back of the pattern. Now the front of the pattern, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to mark our hemline. And you don't have to mark the hem first. In fact, let's do it this way. I'll mark the dart first. So we go up here and we're going to mark our dart. So I'm going to take some pins out so I can get to it. Okay. And my dart is going to be marked first. So again, I'm putting it between the fabric on the wrong side. Don't do your markings on the right side. It will, sometimes they won't come out. Okay, so I'm doing this on the wrong side of the fabric. I'm going to put a stopping point on it, and I am going to measure the distance here, which is roughly 7/8. So that's 1, 2, 3.5 markings. By the way, when you're working with measurements, you have got to get familiar with the numbers 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and 8/8. Those fractions are all they use in sewing field. They don't use anything else. So you got to get familiar with them. In fact, get yourself a ruler that has it marked in 8s. This ruler here has 8 markings to 1 inch. 8 more markings. So I can just count my markings. 5/8 would be 5 lines over. 6/8 is the same as 3/4, and that's right here. So get familiar with those terms because sewing uses those terms all day long. Okay, and as you can see, I've marked my dart. I don't have any circles on here to mark. Okay, and now I am going to mark the center front, which is on the fold, which means that I'm going to have to get this paper up close to the fold so that it can catch it, catch my line. Okay, and then I'm going to remove all of my pins. Okay. And look at my pattern piece, and voila, we have got it ready to go. It's all marked and it's ready to go. My hemline is marked as well. Now I'm going to show you a trick that we use in the sewing industry that home sewers don't do, and this is going to really help you out a great deal. I'm going to show you whenever it comes to a hemline on a garment. Okay, you want to put that garment so that your markings are on the outside showing. Okay, make sure they're even, and then you're going to just put a little tiny snip right on that line that you marked, just a little one on the line that you marked. Okay, same thing with the front, with the back pattern pieces. Okay, so we're going to put these two pieces right sides together, wrong sides facing outward. Match them up so that they are even. And then we're going to put a little snip here and a little snip here. Now remember, if there are pattern pieces on the fold, you don't want to clip on that fold line. This is the fold. I don't want to clip that because it'll put a hole in my fabric. So you want only your outer edges to have that hole. Okay? The next step that we're going to take when you're doing a hem for a skirt, you're going to cut a piece of interfacing 1 inch wide, because this is 1.25 inches. So we're going to cut a piece of interfacing 1 inch wide. Once again, I'm showing you now what they do in the market as designers that they don't show you in home sewing. That's why you're taking my course. So we're going to draw out a straight piece of interfacing. And in fact, I'm going to make it 1 inch wide. So in order to make it 1 inch wide, I just put my 1 inch mark on the white line. And I draw on this side of it. And guess what? It is automatically 1 inch. If you go to the store and buy this hip curve, it's called a styling design ruler. You can get it in Joann's Fabrics. You can also get the straight ruler from Joann's that has these markings. This one's my favorite because the markings are so easy to follow. Okay, I just put this on the 1 inch, which is that broad red line, and voila. Okay, so what you're going to do now is cut this out. And this doesn't have to be the exact length of your skirt. It's just got to be more, it has to be enough. And this is more than enough, what I'm working with here. It's more than enough to cover the skirt hem. And I'm going to show you where this is going to go. And you will not learn this in sewing school, but you learn this in a design industry. And I learned this trick of the trade when I was in New York at a factory, watching them work on my dress design. And I just came home with all these tips and decided to do it myself. And it looks just, my clothing looks store-bought. And that's the way you want your things to look. You don't want people to say, you know, did you make that? You want them to say, where'd you get that? That's the key. And then you can tell them you made it and charge them more to make the same thing for them. They don't even realize how easy this is for you. Okay, so now that I've cut these pieces out, let's take a look at your waistband interfacing. The facings on the top of the skirt. As you know, we did cut them out of fabric and we cut them out of interfacing, but we have not marked them yet. So here's a triangle that we've got to mark on this piece. Okay, there are no other markings on this one. On this piece here, there's a triangle at the top. Now here's what I want you to see before I do too much more, because we're getting ready to go sew this thing together. And that is that the markings on this are going to have to match the markings on the front fold, which is the front skirt piece. This is a front facing. So the front skirt piece, these have to match. And they do. They do match. So when you put this together, they're obviously going to match. Okay? Now, the same thing with the back piece. The back panel has this, and they match. All right. Also, where you mark this here on the side with the dart, these two are going to match too. They're going to clearly match here. All right. And now we are getting ready to go in here and do some stitching, which is what you've been waiting for. And I'm going to put you to work now. So I'm taking all of my pieces. I'm taking these pattern pieces off because I know what my pieces are. Don't remove the pattern piece if you don't know what it is, because it will confuse you. Alright? We're taking our strips of interfacing we cut, our facings with the interfacing, and I'll meet you in the sewing room.